Howdy ho, folks. I thought I would not make you wait very long to end chapter 5 of Philip Hall Likes Me, I reckon, maybe. So here we are. And the last thing we learned was from Ma. And she said, it's about your shirt. Done shrunk to baby size. Sure did. As Pa drove down Pocahontas's main street, I spotted the rest of the pennies leaning up against a yellow fire plug. A block away, Pa turned his car and angle parked in front of the Easy Cash and Carry market. When the pennies saw me walking down toward them, they all shook their heads, just like I was doing something wrong. What does that mean? That I'm not wearing my uniform? No, but I'm carrying it, wrapped like a fish in an old newspaper to show them what they'd never believe without seeing anyway. They're not wearing their shirts either. Too lazy to finish the embroidery, probably. Bonnie began by saying that it was an ordinary washing powder, one of those kinds that they're always talking about over the radio. Then Esther, who would never interrupt anybody, interrupted to say that her water was barely warm. I was losing patience with everybody talking, everybody understanding but me. What are you all babbling about mild soap and barely warm water for? Suddenly, Jenny whipped up from a grocery bag a white T-shirt, so shrunk that the embroidery's lettering was no longer readable. We is talking about this. First, we talked about our wasted efforts. Then we talked about our wasted money. Then we talked about what nobody could understand. What caused the shrinkage? Listen here, I said suddenly. We bought something in good and honest faith that didn't turn out to be a bit of good. Well, if we all go down to the Busy Bee and explain the situation to Mr. Putnam, then he'll have to give us back our money. Probably even apologize that he can't pay us for our trouble. What Mr. Putnam is you talking about? Asked Bonnie, cocking her head like a trained spindle. The only Mr. Putnam I know wouldn't apologize to his ma if he ran her down in the broad daylight. I told her right off. Trouble with you, Miss Bonnie, is that you ain't got no faith in human nature. Still, she thought that old bushy eyes ever had a mother was surprising. Reckon I couldn't just see Mr. Putnam having anything that couldn't turn a profit. Even though I walked into the Busy Bee as slow as I possibly could, the others carefully managed to walk even slower. They stayed behind me, pushing me on toward the wrapping counter and the awesome presence of Cyrus J. Putnam. As I watched him tying a piece of string around a shoebox, I got to wishing that one of those other girls had replaced me as president of the pennies. Then they'd be standing here on the firing line instead of me. The merchant lifted his eyebrows at me, which was a kind of Chesapeake way of saying, oh, excuse me, not Chesapeake, cheapskate. Cheapskate way of asking what I wanted without actually bothering to ask. Well, Mr. Mr. Putnam, it's about what happened 2 Saturdays ago when we bought T-shirts from your store. We washed them like we wash anything else, I said, removing the newspaper from my shirt to hold it up, and they all 5 shrunk up like this. He stretched his lips into a hard straight line. How much you pay for that t-shirt? 89 cents. See? What did he want me to see? Sir? A short blast of air rushed through his nostrils, and I came to understand that his patience zipped off on that blast of air. Something you girls only paid 89 cents for isn't going to last forever. Why, 89 cents for a t-shirt is mighty cheap. Oh, no, sir, I corrected him. Paying 89 cents for something that ain't never been worn is mighty expensive. He waved his hand as though he was shooing off a fly. All right, I was nice enough to listen to you girls. Now y'all get on out of here. And I got me a store to run. Yes, sir, I said pleasantly. We appreciate your attention, sure do. But what we really want is for you to refund us our money. 'Cause a shirt that ain't fit to be washed ain't fit to be sold. Get on out of here. Both his hands were flapping in the air. Now get! We may have left the store like scared chicks, but once outside we became more like mad wet hens. Esther kept saying, imagine, or sometimes she varied it with, would you imagine that? Then, as if we didn't have enough trouble, the tiger hunters, led by the bravest of all the brave tiger hunters, came up to say that we were going to be beaten so bad that it would be a long time before we showed our face in Pocahontas again. Don't fret about it, I told him, 'cause I don't think I want to show my face anymore anyway. A warm tear had begun to worm its way down my cheek. Philip looked uncomfortable. What's the matter? Hadn't he ever seen a tear before? We don't have to relay race today, he was saying. We can put it off until the Sunday of the old Rugged Cross Church picnic. We shook hands on it, but I was not able to say any more. Talking took too much effort. So Bonnie explained while Jenny showed Philip and his tiger hunters what happened to our shirts. Right away, Philip said, we don't have to let Mr. Putteram get away with that. That's robbery. Philip's comment about its being robbery struck me like one of God's own revelations. At the far end of Main Street, sitting on a square of grass, is the old red brick courthouse, where Sheriff Nathan Miller has a narrow office and 2 barred cells. As the pennies and hunters strode up the courthouse walk, old men sitting out on sunny park benches looked up. The sheriff told us all not to crowd. The sheriff told us all to crowd on in. I'll never forget what good police work you and Philip did during capturing those foul thieves. You know, no farmers reported any livestock missing since they left town. His words encouraged me to tell him about our robbery at the hands of the merchant Putteran. I watched the sheriff's face grow more and more thoughtful. Finally, he said, I'm sorry, but there ain't no way I can help you out. But why? Well, with his booted feet, the sheriff pushed his chair from his desk. Follow me, he said, already walking with strong strides from his office. Outside, the men on the benches now seemed doubly surprised to see kids half running in order to keep up with Randolph County's long-legged lawman. A block down Main Street and then 2 blocks down School Street to the last house at the end of the block. The sheriff walked up the driveway and into the backyard. At a backyard sand pile, a little boy dressed in diapers and pullover shirt toddled over, saying, "Da da 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 da." The sheriff picked him up and then asked me, "What do you think of my boy's shirt?" Surely 11 folks didn't walk all the way over here just to look at a tight-fitting baby shirt. It seems silly, but he really did want my opinion. "I reckon it's nice enough, baby shirt," I told him. "Uh-huh," answered the more than 6 feet of sheriff as though he had suddenly struck gold. "Uh-huh," he repeated. "For a baby shirt, it's mighty fine. But it wasn't bought to be no baby shirt. No, sir. It was bought for me. Last Saturday, I paid 89 cents for that T-shirt at the Busy Bee bargain store." "You too? Then why don't you—" "Because selling bad merchandise," he said, "can get a merchant in trouble with his customers without getting him in trouble with the law." We pretty pennies walked with the tiger hunters back toward Main Street like a bunch of beaten soldiers. No reason for hurrying, no good left in the day nohow. Then it struck me like a piece of pie in the face. Why are we defeated? 10 of us, and only one of them Putterums. "Stop," I said, whirling around like a general of the army. "We ain't giving up this battle." "We ain't?" asked Philip. I was frightening. I was the fightingest president the pretty pennies would ever have. "No, we ain't. 'Cause if we all stood out in front of the Busy Bee bargain store showing off our shrunken shirts, then old Mr. Putterham would be so embarrassed he'd have to refund our money." It I broke into a run, followed by Philip Hall, followed by the rest of them. In front of the Busy Bee, we all formed a loose line. A penny, a hunter, a penny, and so forth. Pretty pennies and tiger hunters. When we're working together, we call ourselves the Great Penny Hunters, I said. Since Philip Hall didn't look exactly thrilled about my suggestion, I said, "Well, would you rather be called the Pretty Tigers?" His groan gave me his answer. When a heavy woman with 3 children slowly made her way toward the Busy Bee door, Bonnie approached her. A moment later, she was spreading out her doll-sized shirt across her chest while the woman shook her head and said, "I'm going to do my trading at Logan's." The very next person who was persuaded not to spend money at the Busy Bee was my sister Anne. She said she could buy fingernail polish at the dime store just as well. After Anne, there was our preacher, the Reverend Ross, who was going to buy some white handkerchiefs from Putterham, but the Reverend said he'd be happy to respect our picket line. Respect our what? I asked. Folks who is standing like some of God's own children against the world's injustices is, said the Reverend Ross, a picket line. Never before in my whole life had I ever felt so important. But then, never before had I been on a special assignment for God. Just then, a family of 5 reached for the Busy Bee's door, and I called out, "Don't you folks go buying things in there unless—" I held up my shirt. You don't object to shrinking?" "Lordy," said the wife, coming right over to get a closer look. "Now, ain't that a pity?" Mr. Putterham steps outside the door. "What's this? What's going on here?" I turned to watch Philip Hall because I didn't want to miss seeing him speak right up to that old man merchant. But the only thing I saw was the bravest tiger hunter of them all, with his mouth flung open, looking for all the world like he would never again be able to speak. The proprietor's eyes now swept past Philip and were looking down the long picket line. "Don't tell me that all you kids have been struck speechless. Somebody better tell me what's going on." I took one step forward. "I reckon you ought to know that we is picketing your store, Mr. Putterdom, Putterham, Mr. Putterham." His big, bushy eyebrows jumped up and down as though we were skipping rope. "You is doing what? And to whom?" "We is—" My mouth felt too dry for a stamp licking. "Picketing you," I said, grateful that the words actually sounded. "Now you listen here, you," he said. "Nobody pickets Cyrus J. Putterham, Pocahontas's leading merchant. Know that?" "Yes, sir." "Good," he said, smiling a pretend smile. "Then all y'all get on out of here." Uh, no, sir," I said, trying to remember the Reverend Ross's words about being one of God's own soldiers. "What do you mean, no, sir?" he asked, allowing his voice to rise into full shout. "You just got through saying yes, sir." Uh, well, sir, that was my answer to your question." Mr. Putterham blinked as though my words were being spoken in a strange new language. I tried again. "What I was just saying, Putterham, Mr. Putterham, was, yes, sir, I know all about you being Pocahontas's leading merchant. But no, sir, we ain't moving from our picket line. Not until we get our money back." And here he is, Mr. Putterham. And do you see the little shirt? That's how much her shirt shrunk. No way she'd be able to wear that little shirt. His eyes told me how much he wanted to understand. "But if I give you folks your money back, then everybody who ever bought bad merchandise from me will be wanting their money back too." From the picket line, a single voice called out, "Give back the money." Then more voices, more pennies and hunters together calling, "Give back the money." And I joined, my voice with the penny hunters, and even some folks on the street who were now chanting, "Give back the money." And taken together, the voices sounded as though they were doing a lot more demanding than asking. The shopkeeper threw up his hands. "All right, all right." He smiled, but it wasn't what you'd call a sincere smile. Making my customers happy is the only thing that's ever been important to Cyrus J. Putterham. Take your shirts back to the wrapping counter for a full and courteous refund. After all the shirt money was safely back in the hands of our treasurer, Bonnie Blake, I spoke again to the merchant. "There is one more thing, Mr. Putterham. Mr. Putterham, As long as you girls are satisfied, well, that's thanks enough for me. Why, my very business is built on a foundation of square and fair. Yes, sir, I agreed. Would you mind giving us back our embroidery money? Your what? I presented him with the cash register receipt. $2.50 worth of embroidery thread, ruined when our shirts shrunk. For a moment I thought his face was growing angry, but then he sighed and placed the additional $2.50 on the counter. Thanks, Mr. Putterham. He smiled, and this time it didn't look all that insincere. You called me Putterham. Finally, you did it right. I smiled back at him. And finally, Mr. Putterham, so did you. And that is the end of chapter 5 of Philip Hall Likes Me, I Reckon Maybe. I will say this. I think there are a whole lot of alliterations in this story. And my challenge to you is to go and find 5 alliterations and put them in the comment section below. Until next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May he make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace.